At what moment did you realize you were dating an idiot? We were laying out under the stars and he asked why some were brighter and others dimmer. I told him that there were different sizes, brightnesses, and distances away. Confused silence. You mean they're not stuck up there? I'm lying there thinking this can't be true. But oh yes, it was. Upon further questioning I found that he believed the night sky was a big dark blanket-like thing with stars stuck on it. The fact that our sun was a star also blew his mind, and that just like our sun, other stars could have planets. Too much point. I was crushed. I almost broke up with him there and then. But he was very earnest and wanted me to teach him. So I tried. 2 years later, and a whole lot of stupid later, we broke up. Edith worked with kids with special needs and did a really good job at it. He was well-meaning generally. He wanted to become the world's leading expert in autism. Fine. Good for you. So, I brought him along to my university library, where he spent a day copying a textbook on autism or line by line. I asked him how it was going. He said great. Then he and I had a conversation, where I told him that to be a world expert on autism would take more than reading and copying books. It would involve research, or being really involved in the field, and gaining formal education in it. After that one day in the library, he never went back. I didn't say he couldn't, he just lost interest. He did that a lot, would get super stoked on one subject, and then the next day it would just be over, forgotten. This happened with poker, after he watched the movie Rounders. He lived with a bunch of guys, they all didn't like him, but he was completely oblivious to this. They asked me a lot why I was with him. He set up poker night immediately, and then lost all his money. He was super poor, so he lost about $100, and I forbade him from getting loans to gamble more. Again, the next day, it was gone from his head. Same thing with free mountain climbing, after we watched a Mission Impossible movie where Tom Cruise scaled a rock face with no ropes. I told him he should try free skydiving instead. I was getting pretty sick of this crap by this point. He laughed and it was gone from his mind again. His big dream, and one that actually lasted the longest, was that he wanted to be a mortgage broker. His dad was one, and was really successful. He just couldn't do the math though. He had to take a course and I tried to teach him the formulas, but he just couldn't do it. We were running through problems, and then he turned to me with an exasperated look on his face. Why do the numbers keep changing? As in, why would the numbers change in a certain formula from one problem to another? This almost tied for the most stupid experience, the big blanket in the sky, but not knowing about space, and the sun and general knowledge of how the earth is situated in terms of our solar system, just seemed a little more profoundly deficient to me. For all those asking, he did not have a sweet dick. He was not especially attractive. He was sweet and well-meaning sometimes, when he wanted to be, but he got more and more abusive as time went on. He controlled my every move by the end, and as I had low self-confidence I felt like it was my fault and that by being better, he would eventually treat me better. It did not. Things were going towards physical abuse and I left. He stalked me a little afterwards. Through a natural move due to school, I took the opportunity to lay low, and he left me alone, thankfully. It ended 15 years ago, and since then I've married, and I'm very happy with his polar opposite, an extremely intelligent man, with a sweet dick. Met this woman on a dating site, 30s, talk on the phone briefly, passed each other's phone test, kind of thought it was weird she referred to me as her boyfriend right away, but she was good looking. Agreed to meet for lunch that afternoon, art gallery and drinks. Not engaging at all. She talked about very superficial things with not much depth either. Didn't ask what I did for a living or anything else personal about me. Didn't know who the PM of our country was, and had been the PM for a decade. The kicker came when I tested her to see if she actually was listening to what I was saying, because I had the feeling she wasn't. So I threw in I was addicted to heroin for 5 years, and I'm 1 year sober without blinking an eye. Like I was talking about my favorite color. Oh yeah. Ever opinion she had, she would end with literally agree. And I had to say yes or no. Inappropriate talk about her parents' sexual escapades on the first date. Then told me she was a blue baby. Never hearing the term, I asked what that meant. Infant deprived at oxygen at birth for a period of time. Then it clicked. She was good looking, great bod. She wanted to come back to my place, but it felt like I was dealing with someone who was shy a couple of points from the severely mentally challenged spectrum, and that was our first and last date. Felt bad for her, because someone is going to take advantage of her. It was something I kept realizing throughout the relationship. He couldn't pass college algebra, but thought my physical math class, ordinary differential equations plus other stuff, was something easy that he could help me with the homework on. He refused to retake college algebra to improve his grade because he didn't think he needed to in order to transfer to university, even though a grade of C or better was required by the university he wanted to transfer to. When I was out storm chasing, I'm a meteorology major, it happens, in the Texas Panhandle, he took a look at the radar and saw there was snow in Colorado. He asked me when the snow was going to get to Texas. I said it wouldn't snow in Texas because it wasn't cold enough. He said, you never know, weather is weird. No, I'm pretty sure it's not gonna snow when it's 70 degrees F outside. He refused to let me proofread his essays on his university application despite knowing he's a terrible writer. He didn't get in. He thought he'd be able to transfer a college with a 3.0 GPA requirement with a 2.25. He didn't understand why Oklahoma towns regularly test tornado sirens. He found testing them more than once every spring excessive. There were so many other times. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. I'm no longer dating him. We had some good times, but damn. After several months of dating, we need to get married. Me, I'll think about it. Weeks later, well, we can just go to the justice of the peace and you can just sign a marriage certificate for me. Me, sure, if you enter a prenuptial agreement with me. The following month, we need to talk. You need to put me on the deed to your house. Me, why? Because it's only fair. Me, oh, okay. So you want to start paying on the mortgage / for things in general / contributing to the home? Well no, I pay for my car and student loans which are an extension of me, which means I'm already contributing. Me, well let me think on that one. You need to pay off my car and start paying on my student loan debt. Me, okay, I will if you start working full time at your retail job and purchase a vehicle you can afford. No, I need my brand new car and I wouldn't have time to do anything. Me, are you going back to school? Well, no. Me, but you don't have any time. Yeah. Me, okay, why did you buy a brand new car? Because I don't have to pay rent, because I live with you. Me, yeah. I'll think about it, man. She sure was a smooth operator. I never ended up taking on any of her debt or signing over any of my assets. It ended shortly thereafter. You could say I was less than heartbroken. I've got a good one. TLDR. My first girlfriend thought she found her dad's mescaline prescription and was genuinely shocked / disappointed to find out she was mistaken. My first girlfriend, when I was 16, was a few cards short of a deck. Let's call her J. One day she and her best friend were hanging out at her place and apparently decided to rifle through her father's medicine cabinet to see whether there was anything that could get them high. Classy girls. She called me and the following conversation occurred. J, oh my god, you'll never believe what we just found. Me, what did you find? J, my dad's mescaline. Me, your dad is a lawyer and I don't think he would use mescaline, let alone leave it around your house. J, no, really? It says right here on the bottle. Me, the bottle? You're telling me that your dad has a bottle of mescaline labeled mescaline in his bathroom? J, well it's a prescription bottle full of pills and the prescription on the bottle is for mescaline. So yeah. Me, tries to decide which of the numerous factual inaccuracies to point out, gives up and goes for the kill shot. Me, read me the label. J, it says mescaline tablets 25 mg, take 1 tablet orally before travel. Me, no, spell out mescaline for me. J, meclizine. J, C, mescaline. Me, it says meclizine, and it's for motion sickness. J, oh. I was a high school senior, he was a community college freshman. We started dating at the end of his senior year. He was going to community college because of money. After his first day of classes, I jokingly asked, "So what did you learn today, sweetie?" Like he was a kindergartner. He proceeded to tell me that in his U.S history class they did a brief overview of the semester, and that they were going to be learning about the 52 states. I thought he was playing along with me and laughed. He didn't understand what was funny. He was very surprised when I corrected him. Also, he called collard greens colored greens because they are green. Also, not a joke. His time at college did not last long, but unfortunately, our relationship did. I had to break up with him on 3 separate occasions, not because we had gotten back together, but because each time he literally didn't understand that we had broken up. Even though I had said, in person, to his face, "I don't think our relationship is working out anymore, and I think it's best for us to break up. It doesn't mean I hate you or anything, I just don't think it's working, and I do not want to continue trying." The first 2 times, he was very understanding and agreed. And then I would get a call/text a few days later, asking why I wasn't talking to him and when our next date was. The 3rd time, I was not as nice. Told him straight up, "I do not want to date you anymore. We are not longer dating. You are not my boyfriend anymore. Please give me space." Such an idiot. I'm always late to the good ones. I live in Tennessee, and while in college I dated a girl from Southwest Valley. She was from the sticks, if you will. She lived in the dorms, and during the first week of school some of the more social ladies had gathered in the lobby to pretty much just be loud. They were laughing and shouting back and forth about how they were going to the drag show for girls' night out. My girlfriend at the time perked up, saying, "Oh man, I've always wanted to go to a drag show." While I didn't really care one way or the other, I couldn't understand her enthusiasm about going to a drag show considering that her family was extremely religious and she was about as homophobic as they come. Either way, she joins in and rides with one of the girls. About an hour later, I get a phone call. She is so upset, asking me to come get her right now. She said that she left and was at the gas station across the street and made a big point to tell me that she wasn't where I expected her to be. Now there's only one location in my town where you can find a drag show, so I knew exactly where she was. She thought they were going to the drag races. Our university is about 35 minutes from Bristol Motor Speedway/Bristol Dragway, so she just assumed that's where they were going. It wasn't until they pulled into the club that she finally realized what they meant. I knew he was an idiot, but the memory that really stands out in my mind is trying to explain to him why you can't load 50 unrinsed plates into the bottom of the dishwasher, cram the silverware holder full of as many utensils as will fit, and friggin' stack cups on top of each other on the top rack, the way you stack them in the cabinet. I believe I said, in passing, "Oh, you can't load that dishwasher that full. It's not a very good one. You'll have to just hand wash what doesn't fit." He looked at me blankly. "How will the rest of the dishes get clean then?" Me: "You have to wash them by hand." Him: "I can make them fit." Me: "Right, but the dishwasher can't clean such a large load." Point him: "I think it can." Point me: "No, it really can't. I've used it 100 times. You have to basically pre-wash the dishes before you load them and only do an average sized load." Point him: "I'll just use extra soap. It'll be fine. I can still fit a few more cups." Me: "No, it won't clean them and it could break the dishwasher. Just believe me. Ugh, just let me do it." Him: "I don't know why you're acting like this." Another time I mentioned something about a SUV and he scoffed and said condescendingly, "It's not an SUV. It's a sports utility vehicle." He couldn't name the current vice president or any vice president in the history of the United States. He knew that the president was Obama, but he couldn't remember who the last one was, or the president before that. Point: this man was 26 years old and has lived in the country his entire life, born into a very upper middle class family. He also didn't understand that not every criminal trial in a US court is a lot more than a discussion about how long the person goes to jail for. He didn't realize there's a possibility, in a court of law, of a defendant making their case strongly enough in their defense that they can actually prove law enforcement and the prosecutors wrong and walk away completely free. Point: I could go on and on. I've seen this kind of thinking before in people that were raised in extremely conservative religious families, but he was the only one I actually dated. He spent more time reading scripture while he was growing up than he did textbooks. He broke free of that to some degree, or else he wouldn't have been dating another man at all. But the cultural and general knowledge ignorance was always a battle to help him fill in the gaps. He could name any of the Kardashian sisters and tell me about their individual scandals and personalities, but at the same time he thought the United States was thousands of years old and it had been in charge of the other countries since the beginning. When I told him we are a young upstart of a nation and that European and Asian countries out there are far more old and we are actually the descendants of European colonists that brutally shoved the indigenous people native to the continent off their land, he thought I was making it up. I felt badly for him, but it began to be too much. I have no idea how he graduated from high school. I'm an uncommitted serial dater. Some of the idiot things I have heard from dates/girlfriends. I'm going to vote for Obama, she said. I asked what in his platform do you like. She answered his name is fun to say. I'm having problems with my computer. Do you know anything about Windows Me? This was 2006. Showed me her set of tiny screwdrivers. They were a set of bits missing the actual bit driver. I didn't say anything until she started using those bits to unscrew the hinges holding up her closet door. In high school I put on my list for classes for the next school year math of money and English second language. She told me that math of money was a class for the retards and that English second language was brilliant. I wasn't allowed ESL and math of money should be a required class. Asked if we had ever dropped a space probe into a black hole to see what's inside of it. Walked into a tree. Explained to me that her sleeping with her brother and stepdad was okay since she was on the pill. This was high school. Also incest wasn't cheating on me because it was family. I didn't know Alaska was way up there. All the maps of the US shows Alaska below California. When he insisted that crop circles were genuinely created by aliens and that anyone who didn't believe that was fooling themselves. One can cure cancer by eating certain combinations of fresh foods and Big Pharma is keeping it a secret because cancer is a big profit driver. He doesn't really believe in Western medicine and thinks a naturopath can handle his health issues and that's why he doesn't have health insurance. I pointed out that there aren't a lot of naturopaths who could perform surgery or repair broken bones. Argued with me for over an hour about whether his phone plan cut him a deal on the retail price of a new phone. I work in the marketing arm of a national electronics retailer. Pretty sure I know how that sheet is priced. Somehow managed to have never seen the X-Files, so I introduced him to the show. After an episode or 3, he announced that he felt that watching the show made him more evolved than someone who didn't watch it because he was willing to entertain ideas such as are discussed in the show. Pointing out that it was a 20-year-old TV show and entirely fictional did not make a dent in his conviction. Insisted that he didn't have creditors because all his bills were paid up. Was unaware that the entities to whom you pay bills are creditors. He's self-employed for Christ's sake. We are both in our 40s. Holy cow. I enjoy entertaining some woo-woo ideas myself, but there's a difference between being open-minded and being flat-out gullible. Damn. Story time. One ex decided to go outside and tase his friend while simultaneously being tased. Shit, I didn't think it would actually hurt. Quotes from both of them. Also stabbed his friend in the leg with a box cutter after he stabbed a decent size gash. Claimed since it's so tiny, the box cutter point. I didn't think it would actually stab. When asked what he thought would happen, he replied, I thought it'd be flimsy and bend. I don't know how that logic came into his mind. Most recent ex went to jail a week ago. He and his friend were drunk and breaking into and robbing cars. Broke up with him months ago. Heard this great story from friends. Cops showed up. His friend took off running. Instead of running with him, he hid behind the same car with the stolen items in his hand. When the cops showed up, he explained he was playing hide and seek with his friend. He is 18. When asked why he's holding stolen items from the car that was just robbed, he replied, that's not mine and I don't know where that came from. and dropped it right in front of the cops. He also has stolen cars plenty of times, even though he's been to jail over it twice before. Asked his manager at his old job if he wanted to snort a line of coke with him on break, was fired because of it, and has been in jail / the hospital because he likes to do multiple different hard drugs at once. Once pissed on his best friend's dad. Typical old-fashioned Asian man. Could barely speak English because he was on multiple hits of acid. Don't remember the exact number. Meth, pills, alcohol, and weed. Needless to say, he was kicked out immediately and got smacked upside the head pretty hard. And on the walk home he managed to lose one of his shoes, broke a mailbox, head-butted it hard, fell right off the post, and kept trying to fall asleep on the sidewalk / street. Practically had to carry him home. Luckily it was only about 4 streets over. But being 5'3" and dragging a slumped limp 6 male who's mumbling the most crazy and insane shit and trying to punch and fight inanimate objects the whole time, that's hard. I have so many stories about this idiot, but this comment's already long enough. I pick some winners to date. We were 21 at the time, and I had her play one of my favorite games from my childhood, Pikmin for the Gamma Cube. I was 6 or 7 around the time I first played it, and I succeeded on my first playthrough. After all, it's a Nintendo game designed with a younger audience in mind. The game gives you a deadline of 30 days and a little army of Pikmin helpers to find all 30 of the parts of your broken spaceship, so you can fly home. By the second day, she caused a Pikmin extinction. There were literally no more left on the planet. She had, through numerous mistakes, killed every single one. We had to reload the save. I wrote this off as a fluke because it was fairly early in the game and could have been an honest mistake. But it wasn't 15 days aka half the allotted time later, and she hadn't yet made it to the second level, which unlocks after you find I think 5 or 6 parts. I eventually pointed out to her she would be unable to complete the game unless she started finding around 4 parts a day, and she gave up. The game wasn't meant to be a test, but it turned out to be. It was a test of very basic problem solving, time management, and resource management skills. Basic enough for a 6-year-old. She failed all across the board, harder than I thought was ever possible, and it wasn't for her lack of trying. That's when I first realized it. I loved her to death, and she was the nicest girl in the world, but God was she dumb. Late to the party, but I've got incredibly bad taste, apparently, so here goes. I was 16, he was 17, direct quotes, your boobs are kind of weird. But, like, they're nice. But strange. My boobs were the only ones he'd seen. IRL, when I had a cold, and mentioned taking medicine. But why do you take medicine? Your mom is a pharmacist. She of all people should know that all that medicine crap is bullshit. Beach, I think I know how to treat my cold better than you do. I read his all-time favorite book and messaged him, all panicked, saying something along the lines of, what is happening? Why is this happening? Please tell me I misinterpreted it. After realizing the main character had killed himself, he asked me what the fuck was going on. I told him. Then he realized that holy shit, the main character did kill himself at the end of his all-time favorite book. Talked shit about everybody who consumed alcohol or did drugs. His class had a couple of druggies in there, nothing too terrible most of the time, but then one time we met up when he was slightly tipsy and he got way too handsy. When the whole will setch happen talk took place, he would constantly misinterpret my no as a try again in a couple of weeks. When I stopped things, after they got a little too far for my taste, he'd get butthurt, even though I had told him multiple times that I would not change my mind about having sex. Then I mentioned that as one of the reasons for breaking up. I said something along the lines of, it seems to be important to you, and that's fine, but I'm not ready to do that. And he was like, nah, it was never really that important to me. Despite comparing our relationship to the relationship of our sexually active mutual friends. And the getting way too turned on, then bummed out when I said no. Also one time we were talking about something and I made a joke about Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, like, used his full name, and he asked me who that was and if that was Picasso's name. I think that's really the last straw here. I thought this girl was very pretty that I worked with, so I asked her out. 2 weeks in I could tell her views didn't quite line up with mine. but we hadn't really had super in-depth conversations because we were mainly spending our time being physical. One day I brought up how I was very interested in reading about conspiracy theories, and it sent her off on her beliefs. Aside from being far from articulate, she got very hyped up about how she 100% believed unicorns and fairies were real, and she knew for a fact they were running our government. She was Christian, but had never read the Bible, but knew it all to be completely true. Dinosaurs were placed by Satan to confuse humans and confuse us. When I talked to her about physics and subatomic particles, she had no idea what I was talking about and said the things I was talking about weren't real, and I had been wash-brained her words. When we texted, she couldn't spell 50% of our conversations. She told me we were destined to be together, and it was true love. Apparently she was supposed to be my guide into how to use my powers that were hidden inside my soul. Such was spectacular, but I ended it after the unicorn conversation. I don't know if everything I described fell under dumb, but she certainly was an idiot along with extremely insane. On my phone, so sorry if grammar issues. I want to preface this with this was a rebound relationship. I'm not proud of it, and I was in denial that she really was this stupid until the story I'm about to tell. I was visiting my parents and she called me on the phone. I wasn't going to pick up because I was talking to my mom, but she said to go ahead and answer. So I walked into another room and picked up the phone, and she said, I think I made a mistake. I asked her what she did, and she said it was on Facebook. I only shared my opinion. I'm thinking to myself, faking great, why would you do that? And she says I said something about evolution and now everyone is arguing in the comments calling me an idiot. Okay, pause. Of all of your opinions you could share, this is probably the worst one I can think of. I don't care what your opinion is on this, but I think we can collectively agree this is going to cause a huge argument. How the hell could you not realize this wasn't going to cause an argument? Why did you think this was a good idea? So I asked her what she said, and she goes, all I said was, if evolution is a real thing, how come the monkeys in the zoo aren't people yet? I wanted to die. Is she really this stupid? I couldn't say anything. I was dying laughing on the inside. So I went, oh, it's okay. They just don't understand you. But I have to go. I am the most patient man in the world for this. I deserve a trophy. When she asked me to come inside to her family's home, point backstory, started off as a bad blind date. To fast forward to the moment, 30 minutes into 8mm in the theater, was a Nick Cage fan at the time. I made up an outlandish excuse to leave. She flat out believed it and drove her home. On the way back to her family's house, she grabbed my crotch while I was driving, and I awkwardly swerved into the adjacent lane. Definitely didn't want any of that. Just wanted to end the night quickly by dropping her off. A moment of silence lasted a few miles. Then she shared a story when she was hanging out with her boyfriend and her best friend, female, in her room while her parents were on vacation. At some point, she excused herself to go make lemonade. 20 minutes later, how long does it really take to make lemonade? She walked back to her room to discover both her BFF and Beau having sex on her bed. I have no idea why she'd tell me this. Time passed on. As we finally approached the destination, she hinted multiple times that her parents were not home, in that sexy Times tone of voice. When I dropped her off in her driveway, she asked if I'd like to come inside for a while. I politely said, no thanks, and stepped back into the car to drive away. Bonus fun points, as I approached the stop sign at the end of her street, I saw her parents pulling into the driveway. I knew from the start point it was a long distance relationship, her in Canada and me in California, so we didn't see each other often. I would have to walk her through, on Skype, through very easy and very simple things, such as how to use the tab key instead of hitting space 5 times as an indent, or how to install Discord, or how to change the desktop wallpaper. Lack of familiarity with computers can be forgiven, if not tease-worthy, but she was super gullible. I bet she still thinks wolves are like sharks, in that they have to keep moving in order to breathe. Would easily misunderstand wording, not unlike equals similar, not doubly unlike, and was horrible with hyperboles and analogies. One time I was visiting her, before we were going to have sex, I said put that rubber coat on my little soldier to her, so she would put my condom on for me. She stared blankly at me and asked, with all seriousness, what soldier? What coat? I went soft point, but she was really cute, as in her mannerisms, voice, and behavior was cute. She was not very attractive other than the fact that she was of a healthy weight. She would gesture with her hands, had this adorable nervous laugh, and would put on this unsure frown every time she was acting the dork point the kicker. The major action that confirmed that not only was she kind of slow, but she was a massive moron, was what she did on our 1-year anniversary visit. She flew down from Canada to visit me and my family for a nice visit. The first day she was here, nay, the first hour she was here, she broke up with me for another guy. Point the situation aside, I would have understood if she had broken off our long distance relationship in favor of a guy in her town. But no. She broke up with me for a guy in Texas that she met 4 days beforehand. It took me weeks to convince her to date me, but it only took this guy 4 days to convince her to break up with me and date him. After she broke up with me, she thought it would still be cool to hang out in California as friends, since she got the week off from work and her parents were on vacation. My mom shunned her to the guest bedroom and my ex's parents arranged for her to meet them on vacation. I dropped her off at the airport, didn't exchange any hateful or spiteful language with her until she told me that she wasn't even sure if she liked the guy she broke up with me for. That is when I learned that she was the biggest idiot I had ever met. TLDR, long distance girlfriend broke up with me for another long distance guy on her first day of her week-long visit with me. Math has always been an issue and somehow it came up in conversation that she just doesn't get fractions and decimals. So I started explaining what they are and how they're the same thing or doing the same job, just that decimals are a more accurate way to describe things that are less than a whole and the fractions are an expression of the decimal, etc. This went on for a while and I was keeping it as simple and basic as possible. I happened to have a water bottle that was roughly half full and she had a full one, so I said together we have 1.5 bottles of water or 1.5 bottles of water. But if we were to accurately measure mine I'd have either a little more or a little less than half a bottle, like 0.54321 or something like that. It looked like a light went off in her head and I felt like we made a breakthrough. Then she asked me what the decimal would be for the full bottle. I said 0. She said no it can't, that doesn't make any sense. There's more water in this one. The decimal can't be 0 after what you just explained. I gave up and felt so defeated. I'm just glad percentages didn't come up. She's 27 and has a master's. TLDR, my girlfriend hates/doesn't like math. If I said to her that she gets a hates out of doesn't like mark on any conversations we have about math she wouldn't get it and would tell me I'm wrong. One of my fondest memories of my ex. We were walking through my old campus and we passed a tree that was filled with these huge blackbirds that were also circling overhead. It was cool and eerie, and when my ex spotted it, he exclaimed, "Wow, check out all those hawks." Curious, I said, "What makes you think they're hawks? They look more like turkey vultures or something to me." He then rolled his eyes and said, "I took earth science and I know taxonomy, those are definitely hawks." Then he googled a picture of a turkey vulture, held it up triumphantly, and with a smug look said, "See, this is what a turkey vulture looks like." It was the exact same bird as the ones in the trees. We also went on a ski trip once with friends of mine, and I had asked him specifically if he'd skied before, and he told me, "Yay, I can do a backflip on skis." I was impressed and excited to see him on the slopes, that is until I saw him try to walk in skies. He would literally fall every 10 feet. At first I thought he was fooling around, but by the 4th time I basically asked him what the fuck he was doing, and he exasperatedly told me he had no idea how to ski. I was dumbfounded. "What do you mean? You told me you've skied before you told me you could do a backflip on skis?" He responded with, "I have skied before. I skied once on a dare to do a backflip over this jump a couple years ago, and I did it. I knew then it wasn't going to last, lol." Well, I wouldn't call her an idiot, but a moment that made me question her intelligence a little bit. I'm with her and my friend watching The Departed one night. I've seen the movie many times at this point. She hasn't seen it before, and it's also my friend's first time seeing the movie. If you're not familiar with the movie or need a refresher, the first 30 minutes is the intro to the story, where we see DiCaprio and Damon, the main characters, being introduced with their backgrounds and upbringings and whatnot. Pretty basic stuff. So, we get to the point where the story actually begins, and about 10 minutes later, I think maybe, when the characters pass each other for the same interview. So the first time we see the characters together, with a very puzzled look on her face, my girlfriend pauses the movie and says, "Okay, is anyone else really confused right now?" My friend and I look at each other. "No, what are you confused about?" The following conversation went as such. "Well, who is this guy? Leonardo DiCaprio. Okay, and why is he important? What do you mean? He's one of the main characters. I thought the other guy was the main character. How am I supposed to know that? Matt Damon? The guy we just saw. Yeah, him. He's the main character, but how am I supposed to know who this guy is? You just watched him grow up for like the last 30 minutes. What? No, I didn't. We watched the other guy grow up for 30 minutes. Ah. You serious? Q. Us starting the movie over and rewatching the first 30 minutes of The Departed for a second time. About 10 minutes into our second screening, she lets out an audible "Oh, TLDR. Girlfriend doesn't know the difference between Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio."